Hello, hello. What's up, guys? It's Mistwater here. I thought I'd make another video because no reason not to, honestly. This may hopefully be a short one. I wanted to go over haste breakaway points, and unfortunately, I don't really have um, solid math to give, but I can just speak from experience, right? And a lot of people have been asking me, at what point do I even play the build? Because let's be honest, the build's kind of worthless unless you have a certain amount of haste, right? So what is that haste? The reason why this question is so difficult is because about half your haste comes from procs that you get from outside sources, right? So either your Vita Charge Trinket, um, Blood Right, all the haste procs, Misty Peak, right? Your weapons haste, all of it comes from outside sources. You have to really add all of those up to find out what your true haste is, right? And the one thing I've noticed that even when I'm talking to good monks, they don't know what their haste is at, like actually. They tell me their base, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything, right? Like I can tell you my base. My base haste with raid boss is 55%, but my actual is 110. Like it actually just straight doubles. I receive literally 50, well, 100% more haste with all of my average haste procs. And so obviously there's a lot of variance there, right? If I have bad luck, I go down to 55%. If I have really, really, really good luck, I could be at like 200%, right? It's just how it goes. So, so we're gonna be talking about average haste, right? So you're gonna have to figure that out, and that might take you a long time, or you might have to use a website or something. I don't know how to help you on that one, but this is what I'll say. It starts at about 40% average haste. This is like the lowest I think you could ever do the build. Okay, so either you have to get 40% natural with zero procs, but what's more than likely is that you get about 20% haste with like 4 or 5 haste procs. Now, at this point, the build is about the same as Upwelling, but it's gonna feel really clunky and not good, and probably a lot harder to perform for really no reward. So I still wouldn't really do it around this level. Um, the next level is around 60% average haste. This is where I would definitely do the build. Things get a lot smoother out here. This is maybe you at 30% base haste with 6 to 7 haste procs. It's a lot better. Um, this is where you just sort of focus on keeping your rims up. This is like where you'll have like 5 to 6, maybe 7 renewing mist out. You just want to take advantage of the revivifies. Um, there's a lot of good advice for people at this stage because this seems to be where like everybody's sort of trapped at right now. This is like stage where if you just decided to do the build, you're kind of able to scrounge up some haste gear, and this is about where everybody's at. So the next stage, you actually get to kind of change your playstyle and have a little bit more fun, which is the 80%. When you reach about 80% average haste, you really start playing the build for the first time, and this allows for a lot of variance, right? So this is the moment where you can actually like essence fawn pre-pools and expect it to stay up for a while. You can throw up 2 enveloping mist, expect them to stay up for a while on the tanks in pre-pool. You can even make decisions to enveloping mist or revivify during raid, and you get some interesting decisions there. I mean, you're still heavily kick focused at this point. The majority of your healing is going to come from renewing mist, and so it's going to be very important that you don't let those fall off. So like innervates and in moments where you're forced to spam a bunch of vivifies can be sort of traps because you're essentially selling off your renewing mist to purchase like in the moment HBS, right? So just make sure that if you have to absolutely spam the raid, you know that it's coming at a grave cost, but you have to make that decision, right? Um, this is going to be like an average renewing mist level of like 10. Well, actually, but probably not an average of 10, probably around like 8 or 9. But if you focus really hard, you could probably keep 10 up or 11 up. Um, yeah, and if you could get like a Inevitable Truth or a couple other cooldown reduction corruptions with this, you'd even see higher results. Right now, Inevitable Truth is looking to be about as good as Racing Pulse, so it's like it could help inflate your haste more so than like what it seems, right? So the next breakpoint I think is around about probably 100% haste average. This is where stuff really starts to get fun. This is where you get to make like a lot more big decisions. Like essence farming in the middle of the fight's not a complete waste because you'd expect the hots to stay up forever, but you wouldn't ever want to use a different global. Like you'd only essence farm if you have absolutely nothing to attack for like 2 seconds, right? This is where reapplying enveloping mist on your tanks is worth it, right? This is where you'll start to see like 12, 13 renewing mist out. You could even push into the upper echelons of like 15, 16. Um, this is a really good moment to be playing the game. It's like at 100% average haste, and it may seem impossible, but it's really not. All you would need is all the right gear. I mean, I guess that sounds pretty pompous, but you just need to go hunt down the pieces from Mythic Plus and get like one or two haste corruptions. So it does seem out of your reach, but it is totally possible. To push past 100%, it does truly take like you have to be willing to dump almost every other stat to get just nothing but haste, and you have to hunt down things like the punch card trinket from Mechagon and other areas. But at 100% haste, um, not losing your hots becomes the whole game, right? Like you're going to have so many hots up, and how you decide to play the fight is paramount to your HBS. Like you are 100% tied to your ability to be in uptime. Like the thing is, the higher haste you have, the more pertinent, the more important it is that you're next to a boss or you're next to something that you can pick, right? It doesn't matter if it's an ad. Like I all the time I'll use the darters for rising sun kicks and hive bind, right? All the time. Um, yeah, it's I mean it's really hard to explain. And when you decide to spam vivifies, you're going to lose a lot of those renewing mists if you cast more than like 3 or 4. So ironically, at around 100% average haste is where I kind of stopped casting so many spells and really focused on kicking, and that seemed to have the biggest increase. And after 100% average haste, the build gets actually significantly easier. I felt that the hardest time to play the build was at 100% haste because everything felt so life or death. Like I could just lose half my hots, and that felt really bad. And around 100% base or average haste is where your hots start to synchronize, unfortunately. So what happens is you get a string of good luck, you rising sun kick so many times, and they all reach their maximum duration, which is 4 seconds added to their time plus 30%. That's the formula, right? So, for example, 20-second renewing mist goes to 24 seconds. 24 seconds plus 30% is 4.3. So there are. Sorry, was that good math? I feel like I should probably actually calculate that out, huh? So 20 plus 4 seconds, 24. 24 plus 30%. Okay, it's 31.2. So the actual maximum duration of renewing mist is 31.2 seconds. So what'll happen is you'll get a string of good luck, right? Maybe Thunder Focus T for the double RSK, and then you've added 8 seconds. Boom, you get another reset, and bada bing bada boom, all your hots are put up to like 31 seconds. What happens later on in the fight is because all of your hots are synced up, you might think you're doing a great job keeping them all up, but they might all be on like a 1 or 2 seconds left, and you make that decision to spam a couple more vivifies, and boom, that 8 of your like 12 renewing mist falls off, and you just like when that happens, you kind of just like all F4, like you're kind of done. Like I mean, it's the sad truth, but at 100% haste, the build becomes incredibly frustrating and difficult to play because your raw potential with good RNG becomes you start to get a feel for what it's going to be like with more haste, and you can really start to see like some Superman levels of HBS come through, and it can be frustrating. But that was just more encouragement to get even more haste, more cooldown reduction for me personally. So I'm at around like 111, maybe even 112% haste, and on certain fights I go up to about 116, 117 because of Arcane Heart's uptime. And the difference even between 110 haste and like 116% haste is actually unreal. Like I just do like 20% more healing. It seems kind of nuts, but it's just the nature of how the build is working, right? So here's the big difference between 100 average haste and 110. at 110, you can start to put up enveloping mist and expect them to last a minute or a minute and a half if you play perfectly. And the reason this is important is because that's officially the moment where even if you got a 20 target cleave Vivify off, the enveloping mist is still going to do more healing over time. And so now the build changes once again. So before it was all about Vivify cleaving, right? But at my haste levels, it's all about enveloping mist now. And I think that's apparent because, you know, if you look at like my mount parse and stuff, like I'm really starting to mix in a lot more enveloping mist. And moving forward, that's going to be the play. So I guess in order to summarize everything, at 40%, you just want to focus on, you know, kicking, and you would cast more spells at 40%. Like if you're at 40% average haste, you'd be doing a lot more essence fonts. Um, you know, you'd be more of like a traditional healer, but you're still obviously trying to kick on cooldown. But your proximity requirement next to the boss is not as high. At 60%, you can finally kind of start playing the build a little bit. This is where you'll see, you know, more Vivify healing, and you really want to take advantage of having like 5 more Renewing Mist out. At 80% haste, um, kind of like 60%, but you just have a lot more Renewing Mist out. And so this is at the point where haste becomes really, really good for you, and mastery starts to become shit. And so you really want to focus on just keeping out, you know, as many Renewing Mist out as possible, just always Rising Sun Kick. And it just sort of gets more and more extreme from then on, right? Like, you morph out of a traditional healer and more into this weird kind of beast the more haste you have. And so you need to realize what point you're at and how that's going to affect your healing, you know? If you're at like 80% average haste or above, there's no reason for you to be using Essence Font in almost any situation. But if you're at 60% below, you're sort of forced to, right? Just because of the nature of how it plays. And then when you reach above 100% haste, is when you start mixing in enveloping mist in combat. At 80% haste is where I would say you could enveloping mist outside of combat for the initial pre-pull, and expect those to drop off after like 20 seconds, maybe 30 if you're lucky. And then over 100% haste, you can start to expect those enveloping mists to start lasting 30, 40, even like a whole minute. And then 110% haste, they're lasting like a minute and a half. And I suspect around 120% haste, one more expedient piece than what I have, I will probably reach. I could probably maintain 10, I imagine, permanently. And then 2 expedient pieces will be the last 10. So if I was to gain 2 expedient pieces, I firmly believe I could keep up all hots on all people all the time, permanently. So that's the end game goal. 60 hots, you know. Uh, yeah, I don't know. I'm sort of rambling at this point. Hopefully that helped you guys out a little bit. Feel free to ask any questions you want. You can list me your haste, your number of haste procs, and I can kind of give you advice about what you should do. Maybe and oh, I guess yeah. So your stat weights change drastically depending on the number of haste you're at, right? So and even your essence choices. So the lower haste, you're gonna have considerably higher mana issues, right? Up until about 100%. And the reason this is because you're having to cast more because you can't just rely on kicking to do all the healing for you. When you reach like 80% haste and above, mana kind of stops being an issue because you just kick and your hots do all the healing and you cast the occasional Vivify. I'm at a point where mana has become an issue again because I'm constantly reapplying envelopings and then they're falling off a minute later. Um, but mana again won't become a non-factor for me in like 10% haste. So there's just so many nuances and different playstyles at different brackets of haste. And I would say the number one thing is you have to figure out what bracket of haste you're in and how you have to play to that amount of haste. And just look forward and try to get to the next bracket as hard as you can because nobody wants to be in the 40% or lower, 60% or lower bracket. The build just kind of feels difficult and pointless. You know, I don't want to put a Vivify out that only hits like 3 targets, 4 targets, 5 targets. That sounds miserable. You feel like you have no control over the whole raid, you know? So, yeah, if you guys want, I guess maybe what would be easier is, you know, hit me up with a question if you want. Tell me your average haste, maybe, or your base haste plus your procs, and then I could maybe give you some advice from there. and suggestions, right? But whether or not it's even worth developing mist is definitely an interesting one. I would say if you're over 80% average haste, then developing mist reapplying on the tank is worth it, and then over 100% is when you start using it actually to heal single targets. So, all right, this video is long enough. Sorry for the rant. You guys have a good one.